Let's talk about the future for the Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears, and some other NFC rebuilding teams with our guy, Brad Spielberger, joining the show now, Pro Football Focus. Brad has been popping off on Twitter lately. I absolutely love to see it. Going to war with people. So are you kind of a closeted Bears fan, Brad?
Oh, it's not closeted. I guess I try to, because because I cover all 32 teams and try to, I don't want to be a full-on Bears account, but no, I'm a diehard Bears fan. There's a poster of Mike Ditka right here.
Nice.
There's a closet full of Bears jerseys right over here. Nothing closeted about it. I just try to cover the whole league, not just one team.
Yeah, and I think that you had a very level-headed, I thought that you're maxing out the character limit on your Twitter like last week. Thoughts on Justin Fields? I completely agreed with it. Like, you thought you'd seen a few strides, but was it enough? And given the situation, and I'm paraphrasing to very, very quickly here, but you feel like Caleb Williams is probably the right direction for this Bears team to go after it was all said and done.
Sure, and just tied into Arizona, I know it's a different conversation now, but like if you had 1.01, it's a different conversation to me at least than if you're sitting where you are now, where if I'm the Cardinals, like I'm not interested in, do I compare QB3 to Kyler Murray? No, it was, hey, is Caleb or Drake May a guy that we think is a generational prospect, whatever buzzword you want to use? If not, then we're going with Kyler. We're getting an elite receiver. So I feel the same way. If the Bears were sitting at the 3rd overall pick from Carolina, say, okay, awesome. We're going to get an elite receiver and a Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll use the 9th overall pick on a tackle or whatever the case may be, and we're off and running. It's more just that for the second year in a row, you've been gifted the first pick in the draft, and you can't pass up on it again. Last year's prospects were not, I think, held in the same regard. The top 2 guys this year, are really, really special players.
So you mentioned top 2 guys. We need this to become a Jaden Daniels hype train program. With New England sitting there in 3, like what has to happen for Jaden Daniels to go 3rd overall? Because it feels like the Belichick thing, what's happening there? Like, I don't feel like Bill would take another rookie. I feel like he would try to win, take a plug and play player like Marvin Harrison Jr., get a veteran. But like, what kind of dominoes do we need to see so quarterback goes 1, 2, 3?
I do like Jaden Daniels a ton. Let's be clear there for sure. I think some of the knocks on him are kind of funny too. Like I've seen some people say, oh, he's a late breakout. He had 400 passing yards and beat Justin Herbert in a game at Arizona State when he was a true freshman, like 5 years ago. Like, this guy has been a baller for a very long time. Obviously did not declare. And of course, the Heisman, all that has boosted his stock to a higher level. But I think he could go, that early. It's you never know with the quarterbacks. Guys always creep up the board and go earlier than expected. And the Patriots, I think it's maybe a variable destination. Maybe they just start from scratch and don't go with a connection and kind of just revamp the whole process. I do think Bill is going to be out of there at some point in the near future. They're just kind of working through all their options, figuring everything out. And I think they have to go quarterback, whether it's Bill or not. If it is Bill, he's got to take quarterback. I mean, they don't have one on the roster. So, hey, maybe you guys are in a good spot where the first non-quarterback off the board is an Arizona Cardinal.
All right, now that we're having that conversation, I mean, it's easy now that you've identified Kyler Murray, and I think he did his end of the bargain at the end of this season here for the Arizona Cardinals to at least give the fan base some reassurance. He played really well down the stretch. The Arizona Cardinals, so many needs still on this rebuild, but would help to kickstart things with Marvin Harrison Jr. Am I right?
Certainly would. And look, I'm not going to try to hot take or galaxy brain or anything like that. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number 1 receiver in this class. I think that is clear. But in the same way that I would say in most draft classes, Drake May probably is the number 1 prospect. And I still want to go through and watch all of their film again. But I do have Caleb Williams as the number 1 guy personally for whatever that's worth. I'm not a quarterback guru, but and then I would say the same thing about Malik Neighbors is probably the number 1 receiver in most draft classes. This guy is a special, special player. If you want to comp, he kind of does remind me of DJ Moore a little bit, not just saying that because the Bears connection. He's like the great run after the catch type of guy. He's physical. He's big. He can push guys off at the line that are trying to press him and bump him off his routes. He's a complete player. He can win downfield, intermediate, over the middle of the field. Trust me, I don't be upset if you end up with Malik Neighbors. You're still getting a really, really talented player.
So, Brad, we touched on this last time you were on the show. So we've got big time problems with the Houston Texans continuing to win games. Like that was
Yeah.
supposed to be our Carolina pick. It was supposed to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
They won the division and they're hosting a playoff game against Joe Flacco this weekend. So we're lighting that pick on fire at this point. And while I proposed to Bo in the chat yesterday, and I got almost driven off the stream that I think the Cardinals should trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr. Just get some assurance, go from 4 to 3. That pick is interesting now. Like, do you think it makes sense? Like, Brian Burns is available. Make a phone call. See if you can net him. Like, those picks in the 20s, and I know it's a loaded draft, but given where Arizona is, Pete Carroll's gone today. Kyler Murray plays really well. Should have been 500 in his 8 games coming back. Like, as much as I want to commit to, rebuild, every year we're grinding it out, draft and develop. It does feel like when you pass on Will Anderson Jr., you trade down, you recoup picks. Now is the time to strike and get impact makers. Am I wrong there?
I would say this, like the general principle for me is always going to be you do want to overall just trade down, stockpile, draft and develop, all those things. However, really what it's about is you can pick your spots. I don't want you to be the New Orleans Saints and you're trading up every single year. You're adding 4 guys a year to the roster. I know they drafted well for a stretch of years. They also just missed the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row, and they stink, and they're old, and they're not good. So I'm just taking some victory laps in the Saints, whole different thing. But what it does is it gives you optionality. And you sit there and say, because our general principle is to move down to get more capital, more ammo, we are going to at times go up or use that draft pick to get a veteran. And the best examples are the Eagles and the Ravens. They still skew towards – think about Baltimore, for example. You move off of Orlando Brown Jr. You move off of, obviously, Marquise Brown. Like, that's your general MO. But then when you want to strike and go have an A.J. Brown type traded for the Philadelphia Eagles, you still do that as well. And the Eagles obviously have all this extra draft capital from the trade with the Saints. So long answer short, I don't disagree with you. I think Brian Burns is going to get tagged and then is going to beg for a trade to get out of Carolina. Why not explore that potential trade?
Brad, you do great work, obviously, Pro Football Focus, where you can find some of your free agent rankings already up there. 150 deep now? Is that?
We're still at 100, but we're getting there. We're
still at 100, yeah. And you've broken it down by position as well, and those are great lists. But when you look at the organizations maybe poised to make the most noise this offseason, are the Cardinals in that conversation? And who else are the ones armed with cap space and draft capital that you think can really improve rosters?
Yeah, Cardinals are top 10 in projected cap space as of today. Obviously, the 2 first-round picks. I know you were hoping for, a top 5 or top 10 pick and not, something in the 20s, but still, always great to have. I agree it's a good class. We touched on receiver. I think there will be some good tackle talents available at that 20-ish range too. And now, of course, with the injury to DJ Humphries at left tackle, I'm sure that becomes a big priority. I also think a lot of the edge rushers are going to fall more towards that range. Good players. I don't think any of them are great special talents besides Alayatu Latu at UCLA. And he, has some injury history, kind of some question marks there. So I think Arizona is going to be very active. I think the point of taking a step back last year was so you could take a 2 steps forward this year. And patience is great for Monty and Gannon. They knew the assignment, but they're not going to sit there and just not try to win games. They probably want to win games next year, make the playoffs. Pete Carroll's gone. They're probably trying to jump right back into the mix.
So you mentioned him. So DJ Humphrey, since the last time we talked, tore his ACL. He's still waiting to have surgery. He's got to wait for the swelling, I think, on his MCL to go down. All-time, first round signing, draft pick of the Cardinals, great Cardinal, but it does feel like, he probably won't play at all next year. And they had an option to keep him. I think most of his guaranteed money was gone. What do you do with that now? Because you have a huge hole now at left tackle or right tackle, depending on what you do with Paris Johnson Jr. Are you cutthroat? Can you manipulate that? Walk our viewers through that, because me, myself, I don't understand the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, so there are no injury guarantees remaining in the rest of his contract. So what would happen in theory is you do release him. You're clearing $13.8 million. So I just mentioned how Arizona's already top 10, and now you're adding a giant chunk to the equation there. And what would happen is it's a whole convoluted process. You would pay him a little bit in injury protection benefit, about $1.2 million on the salary cap, but it's either 1.2 million in addition to some dead money, or paying him a $15.7 million salary, like you said, to probably not play. So I do expect he is going to get released and they'll move on. He has been an awesome Cardinal. I think probably doesn't get enough respect for the journey he's had. Been a very good bookend, but I think that's how you go about it. And then you maybe, use one of those picks there, maybe foray into free agency. I think that is the appropriate approach at left tackle.
When you follow Pro Football Focus on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, you guys have all these great, landing spots for some of the big names, including T. Higgins. You got, the Bengals, Panthers, Patriots, Chiefs, other. When you start to compile this stuff, and I know you're the one kind of leading the charge, I'm sure, over there, which players, big name players, are you just connecting the dots with the Cardinals for? If it's not maybe like T or some of the other ones.
Yeah. I think one of the receivers got a Cardinals mention. I do think that position makes a whole lot of sense. For them, it is receiver. It is corner, I think, is a big one as well. If a Jalen Johnson hits the market, if a L'Jarius Sneed hits the market, I guess plays more man coverage, but I think Gannon would be intrigued by that inside-outside skill set. You can do different things with him, move him around. Chidobe Awuzie in Cincinnati, kind of working through an injury of his own, but a very good zone corner for a while in Lou Anarumo's defense. I think those spots do jump out. And the last piece for me is defensive line, right? I think a guy like a Jonathan Grenard would be very attractive. Current Houston Texan. We'll see if he plays in the playoffs, but had a great year for himself. Really, really good run defender with pass rush upside. Like I said, had a great year this year. Like those type of names, corner, edge, and receiver, I think make the most sense for Arizona.
Did you hear that? Can you say that for Johnny one more time? Was it Jonathan Grenard from the
Bo brought this up yesterday. So he's being a smart ass. I understand. I would take that. I'm not opposed to that.
12 and a half sacks, 15 TFLs, played at Louisville, the alma mater of Jonathan Gannon. It just made too much damn sense.
I don't love ACC defenders, Brad. That's a different conversation.
Despite being so productive in the AFC South.
I do want to grave dance a little bit on Chicago Bear fandom, because we have been told for about 4 to 6 weeks, you idiots, you're not getting Marvin. We're taking Marvin. We're going with Justin Fields. And then today, Ryan Poles kind of stepped on everybody's throat and used the word but, and basically said, but we're going to pivot to Caleb Williams. He didn't say as much. So are you pretty confident Williams and Drake May are going to go 1-2? Like, is that all but a done deal? Because it does feel like we could probably see a Justin Fields trade in like a month. That feels like something that has to happen quickly, because you don't want to let that fester.
So, Bulls last year, traded the first overall pick before free agency began. It was probably, I want to say like March 2nd. So, 6 weeks from where we're sitting right now. I won't say it's like ironclad, lock it in with a Sharpie. I'd be shocked. I'd be truly flabbergasted if they don't go that direction. I don't want to look. I'm a Bears fan, so I'm not trying to give up the secrets here. You want to drive his value higher. You want teams to think you really are struggling to make this difficult decision. You love him, and they do love him so much. They do. As a person, they genuinely, the quarterback they're looking for, they say, I hope this kid is every bit like Justin Fields as a leader, as a person, as a friend, as a culture builder. They could not like him more. On the field, it's just not really there, in my opinion. Not all his fault, but I think those guys are going 1-2. I don't know what the order will be, but that is my expectation.
Brad, we'll get you out on this one. When we look at the draft and we see free agency, we talk about all these big names, but is there anybody, much like the previous question I asked, is there anybody that just to you fits what Jonathan Gannon or Drew Petzing or Nick Rawlis likes to do in either one of those avenues to improving this team that might not be like the marquee name, but you're like, that's a Cardinal, in my opinion?
It's interesting. I think one, I don't know if they crossed paths in any of their stops, but Steven Nelson's been a good veteran corner for the Houston Texans all year. Obviously plays a ton of zone down there as well. And I think he would just make sense if they wanted to add a veteran presence, a guy that is scheme diverse, can play all different alignments, add a little bit of edge, a little bit of nasty to your defense, particularly in that secondary. I shouldn't just say secondary, but obviously that is Gannon's MO. The draft class is really, really good at corner as well, if we're going to stick with that theory. And if you're thinking names that are going a little bit later, maybe people aren't talking about quite as much, I'll give you a couple. One to me is Quinyon Mitchell at Toledo. You're going to hear his name a ton. I think he might be a top 50 pick by the time this is all said and done. He's PFF's highest graded corner 2 years in a row, which might never happen again. The variance that happens at corner is wild. So for him to pull that off is pretty crazy. And then a guy that is just a kind of a guy I love personally. I don't know how good of a scheme fit he would be, but Kyrie Jackson is a corner at Oregon. To me, he moves really well for a guy who's 6'3", 200 pounds. Like, I just think he's fluid. He's not Christian Gonzalez, who we may have discussed. I have a huge crush on. But he's a really, really good, big physical outside corner that I think, again, can play some cover three, do different things. That position in the draft is loaded.
It's funny you said Steven Nelson. Sorry, Johnny. I just wanted to work this in. Like, when the Cardinals were playing Houston before the week of preparation, Jonathan Gannon said his name a couple times, and he said it almost just with a little twinkle in his eye. So it might be a good vet corner to add to this roster.
And probably wouldn't cost you a ton of money. And so I asked that, Brad, because this team has no defensive linemen. And I'm not just paraphrasing. They have no defensive linemen. And this draft class, while they can get quality depth, day 2, day 3, it doesn't feel like they're going to go heavy, at least in the first round of defensive linemen. Just the talent's not there. You have to lean into the talent of the draft. So like Christian Wilkins, I talked about him yesterday. Is he an option? Is he going to hit the market? Because it does feel like you're going to have to overspend on somebody, even if like Wilkins is turning, 28, 29 soon. That does feel like the splurge spot, because what alternative do you have?
I agree. If Justin Madubuike makes it out of Baltimore, you need to be in the conversation there. If Christian Wilkins makes it out of Miami, you need to be in the conversation there. I could not be more with you. We saw last year some good players. I guess like a Zach Allen go elsewhere and play some good ball for a new team. I think defensive line, I agree. We spent too much time on corner. Gannon comes from a Philly team that also had one of the better defensive lines we've ever seen. Yeah, I think it should be a priority. And I agree with you. It's not a great early spot in the draft, but I do think at that 20 spot, here's some names I think aren't going to go as early as people talk about. Jared Verse at Florida State, I think will be there for the Texans pick. Even Dallas Turner from Alabama, I kind of think will be there for the Texans pick. They're good players. Just to me, they're not like special talent, top 15 type players when there's this much talent on offense. So I'll throw those two out. Maybe second round, potentially Chop Robinson from Penn State. I think he could be there as one of those like early second type players, a very, very bendy, good, explosive, bursty edge rusher. I'm with you. You got to spend there or draft there as well.
Right, we always appreciate the insight. Even got it via Kyle Odegaard a week ago with your insight on DJ Humphries. It's invaluable. You got to check it out. Pro Football Focus. He's going to expand the top 100 free agent list to 150 and then 200. And, of course, your insight in the draft. Unbelievable. At PFF_Brad Spielberger. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon, my guy.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.